the last session of the forum, the session 3. In session 3, we'll discuss the topic of core benefits of addressing air pollution and climate change. Let me briefly introduce our participants for session 3. We have a moderator and 2 panelists present here and 1 panelist participating online through Zoom. Professor Jung-Hun, Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Konkuk University. He's here with us and will be moderating session 3. I would also like to introduce panelists for our session. Dr. SoJin, Research Fellow at Seoul Institute, and Dr. Akeem, Head of Office, WHO Asia Pacific Center for Environment. Professor Wu, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. I'm Jung-Hun Wu, who is a civil and environmental engineering professor of Konkuk University. I'm very glad and honored to be here as a moderator. For the last 2 sessions, we discussed about where we are and try to think about the linkage between the European experience to the region of Northeast Asia. Now we are going to think about how to build a link between climate and air quality. So this should be a very interesting session. So I'm very glad to have three good researchers in this field to work as a panelist. So let me introduce Dr. SoJin Lee, research fellow of Seoul Institute. So Dr. Lee got the PhD in environmental science in Gwangju Institute of Science and Technology. He conducted atmospheric modeling study during his stay at NCAR of USA. After joining Seoul Institute, he has been participating in various research on metropolitan air quality modeling and climate policy. His topic today is exploring the relationship between CO2 emissions and population-weighted PM2.5 in Seoul. Dr. Lee, the floor is yours.
Thank you for introducing me. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me for this international forum. And it's my honor to be here to present my research topic. Today, I'm gonna present on exploring the relationship between CO2 emissions and population-weighted PM2.5 in Seoul. It seems that everyone already know that the air we breathe in Seoul really affect our health. So that's why there have been many Clean Air Act implementation in Seoul. But to me, it's somewhat unclear that these Clean Air Act really also impact on the climate mitigation strategies. So from now, I have been researching about air quality strategies related to mobile emissions, and I also have a plan to extend this result to CO2 emission reductions, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. So today I focus on the mobile emissions and the population-weighted PM2.5. Okay. So I'm going to start talking about the air pollutant emissions from the mobile source. So in general, to evaluate the air quality policy, we generally rely on comprehensive air pollutant emission inventories. And technically, the key component of emission inventory is SCC, Source Classification Code, also known as SCC, because the individual source classification code are strongly linked to the individual air quality policies. So if the air pollutant emissions and climate greenhouse gases emissions are fully connected with the SCC, it is really good for both policy makers and researchers. That's the case of the So that's the case of the US inventory. The left figure shows the proportion of mobile source in the NEI 2020 emission in LA County, US. And as you can see, the mobile emission source account for about 60% of carbon dioxide emissions and 40% of the PM2.5. And in case of moving to right figure, in case of the Seoul PM2.5 emissions, you can see from 2016 to 2020, the PM2.5 emissions from mobile sources are significantly important. Unfortunately, the greenhouse gas emissions are not prepared for SCC, fully coupled SCC in my inventory, so I cannot provide a detailed number of greenhouse gases from mobile source. But based on the LA County emission status, we might be able to figure out the total carbon dioxide emissions from mobile source will be significantly high also in Seoul. So now we are looking at the concept of a population weighted PM2.5. So actually it refers to partially averaged PM2.5 levels across an urban area. And this can be taking into account both the distribution of PM2.5 and the population density within each region. Therefore, organizations like UN and the WHO regularly reported about the population weighted PM2.5 for their major cities or European area countries. So I think it would make sense to consider the population weighted PM2.5, because using this concept, we can develop some air quality strategies to mitigate health risks associated with elevated PM2.5 levels, especially in urban areas. And in conventional method, we estimate the population weighted PM2.5 based on census data, or the scale is generally considered the citywide scale. But the problem is that Seoul presents a unique challenge due to their very high population density compared to with other global major cities, and very distinct economic activities across their variation areas. So in this case, we have employed some new data, high resolution population estimated by telecommunication data. So in Seoul, they reported this kind of data regularly, and we can find some, we can figure out some hourly and daily basis population. For example, in the left figure, I selected 10 areas where there are high population for all ages, and you can see during the weekdays from 10 a.m. to 15 hours, approximately about 100,000 people are staying there. And the difference between the weekday and the weekend are significantly different. And in case of population for the ages of 10 to 19 years old, the pattern of distribution is so much different. And the interesting is that the 10 areas selected from this table are famous for the private educational institute, such as in Daechidong or Mokdong, like that. And we also use the low-cost PM sensors in Seoul, and in Seoul, more than 10,000 of sensors are operating in Seoul. And here, as you can see, the left figure shows the national criteria air pollutant monitoring network in Seoul. And the right figure shows the displacement of low-cost PM sensor. And using the aforementioned population data and the data from this low-cost sensor, we can estimate the high resolution of district-based population population weighted PM2.5 more than 400 small districts in Seoul. For example, these figures present for the top 10 areas based on the high active population in Seoul during the winter time. As you can see, for example, 11 p.m. on Friday, you can see that the relative exposure of PM2.5 can increase up to 56%. And the right figure shows the estimated kilometer traveled by the vehicles in Seoul area, and you can see that the pattern of increasing population weighted PM2.5 and the increase in the total volume of traffic is somewhat similar. So what I would emphasize thing is that conventionally, we generally evaluate the air quality policy based on how much the policy can reduce the yearly based, annual PM2.5 levels on the South Korea. But if we shift our focus onto the reducing PM2.5 exposure, then I think the value of air quality policy related to mobile emission can be different. And in this figure shows the breakdown of individual component of emission from mobile source in Seoul. And as you can see, it can underscore the importance of controlling diesel powered vehicles powered by diesel, and the truck and the SUV should be controlled in the Seoul area. And thank you for your attention. Any comment, feedback, or suggestion will be welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for your nice presentation. And he discussed about the importance of having the integrated greenhouse gas and criteria pollutant emissions inventory, and also discuss about the importance of using the modern big data and IT technology to understand air pollution and climate change actions more precisely. Thank you again. Thank you very much. And let me invite our next panelist, Dr. Lara ALELUIA REIS. Dr. ALELUIA REIS is a scientist at RFF-CMCC EIEE. She holds a PhD in engineering science from the University of Luxembourg and developed an air quality impact model for the WITCH integrated assessment model. And he also is contributing also the IPCC AR6 report, and was a consultant of the World Bank and Asian Development Bank. She's now participating in several European Commission projects on climate policy. Her topic today is air pollution health co-benefits of net zero climate policies. Laura, floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. Could you just confirm you can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes. That's perfect. Thanks. Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, thanks for the invitation. Very happy to be here, and I'm very happy that you allow me to present our results. So I will present. My name is Lara ALELUIA REIS. I am talking to you from Milan. It's still morning here. And I will present on this paper. We have just finished it. We are on the phases of on the stage of submitting on air pollution health co-benefits of net zero climate policies. But what I would like to say to you, first of all, is apologize that the models we use don't have super high resolution on the region you are, so we don't have super high resolution on the region of the Eastern Asian, Northern Eastern Asian region. But I hope our results are still helpful for the discussion. All right. So I know you all know this, but let me just remind you. So the World Health Organization considers air pollution as the most important health environmental risk. In 2019, just considering outdoors, so just ambient air pollution, 4.5 million people are estimated to have died due to air pollution. Other metrics could be used, for example, daily disability adjusted life years, and these numbers are also big when we consider other metrics. And one in each 9 deaths worldwide in 2019 occurred due to air pollution, either because of particulate matter pollution or ozone pollution. So here we are going to deal with these two pollutants. So you also probably all know this, but just to summarize very quickly, so how does climate really relates to air pollution? So it relates to air pollution through human activities, fossil fuel combustion activities, but not only. Agriculture, for example, is a major contributor of air pollution. Of course, industry and the power sector, and of course, mobility. We all love mobility. So these emit greenhouse gases. And greenhouse gases, as we know, such as methane, CO2, and N2O, they warm the climate. On the other hand, these activities also emit primary pollutants, such as SO2, NOx, ammonia, VOCs, and primary PM2.5. These, in turn, the primary pollutants in itself already have an impact on health, but they also react in the atmosphere to form secondary pollutions. So the secondary part of PM2.5, for example, such as ammonium salts, ammonium nitrates, ammonium sulfates, for example, and ozone. And these are the two pollutants we'll be dealing here in this paper. And this, of course, cause harm to health. There's a very long list of effects, cardiovascular diseases, lung cancer, diabetes, many low acute respiratory diseases, and so on. So there's a very long list, and every year the global burden of diseases adds more impacts of air pollution to our health. So it is important to study this, and it is important to study it together. So you probably are telling me, yeah, Lara, but there's so many co-benefit studies already. Why is this one different? Well, there's a new set of IPCC scenarios. So first, let me just give you a quick round here. The former assessment report of IPCC, what we used to consider is an end-of-century target. For example, how do we achieve 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees by 2100? What this does, and especially consider that some of these models are perfect foresight models, so that they can see what happens in the future. The policymaker in these models has perfect foresight, can see what comes after. And what generally happens is that they might increase emissions at the beginning of the century because they know that they will be able to decrease emissions at the end of the century. So if you see here in this graph, this red line would represent some kind of temperature or carbon budget limit that can be surpassed at the beginning of the century, and then afterwards we compensated for it with negative emissions. So these are, for example, DAC or BECS technologies that can actually absorb the carbon from the atmosphere and compensate for the overshoot that we did before. Now, to avoid this, there are 2 risks associated with this. The first one is that we may trigger some climate tipping points because we overshoot at the beginning of the century these targets. And the other one is that it heavily relies on negative emissions by the end of the century, which means these negative emission technologies, they are not yet fully mature. So there is a risk there on the scale of the deployment in usability and feasibility. So we risk missing on these climate targets. So the IPCC new assessment report has done this new generation of scenarios called the net zero, as opposed to the end of century, where if you see the area under these curves is exactly the same. So the budget, the carbon budget, so the temperature by the end of the century is exactly the same. But these scenarios never allow the world to go net negative. once it reaches zero emissions, it stays there. It cannot be net negative. What this does is that it avoids overshooting at the beginning. So there's more sharp and stringent mitigation at the beginning. So what we really want to know in this paper is, okay, is this new policy design, is this new set of policies better from an air pollution point of view? There's a paper from Nuri et al. Saying that this already, these type of policies avoid a lot of climate risks. So what we want to know here is that, okay, but are they also good for air pollution? So the results I will show you will always be the difference between net zero scenarios and end of century. Net zeros being this new scenario that we consider. All right, so what do? We use a large set of engaged scenarios, around 300. So these are 36 scenarios with several carbon budgets and 9 models. These give to us emissions of CO2 and also air pollutants, which we put into a model, a very reduced form model, a little bit like the EMAP model you've heard about in the previous session. And then we compute concentrations. From these concentrations, we map them with population, and we compute impact functions. Now, there's a lot of uncertainty on these health impact functions. So actually, to account for all this uncertainty, we include several impact functions that we find in literature, and then we go on to estimate the economic damages or the economic benefits of these policies, using also 4 types of damage functions. So always including uncertainty. Because we include uncertainty, in the end, what we have is not one value, one result. We have a distribution of results with a given probability, each of them with a given probability. And that's what I will show you. All right, so first of all, here's our first results. What you see here is the different functions, health impact functions that we used. But importantly to see, and the ones you see here after the dashed line are for ozone, the ones before the dashed line are for PM2.5. What we see, first of all, is that it's always positive. That is, the difference between using end-of-century policies or net zero policies is always positive. That is, net zero policies are always better in terms of avoiding air pollution than the previous design of climate policies. So, and especially, this is especially true for regions like China and India, would benefit the most for non-overshooting climate policies. So we avoid overshooting temperatures, and they will have the most co-benefits as well. And these co-benefits are seen mostly for stringent climate scenarios. Of course, if you have anyway a high temperature scenario, it doesn't really matter how you reach this scenario. But if you have a 1.5 degrees or a 2 degrees, it does matter if you use end of century or net zero. And what we see is that we see more co-benefits for 2030 because, of course, the fact that you cannot go net negative at the end of the century makes it such that you have to reduce more at the beginning. So these benefits are even more important at the early century. This means for the policymakers hearing us today that they can actually prevent their impacts on their air pollution. So again, they can be preventing their own premature death if they would adopt to such policies. So we estimate that net zero policies avoid, in China, for example, around 114,000 premature deaths, and in India around 86. For the world, this would be 211 around this number. The intervals that you see there are the confidence intervals given all the uncertainties we add to this study. Now, this is the same thing, but what you see here is the cumulative distributions. And what I would like to show you is that if you look carefully for all of these functions, including all the uncertainties in the parameters of these functions, we always see the green line to me, it's my left, to the left. That is, so it's always dominated the distribution. So the net zero policies of premature death always dominates the distribution of the end of century to the left. That is, there's always less premature death in net zero policies. This is consistent across all the parameters we've checked and across all the impact functions we've checked. And here we see the same. So if you see the green line is always to the left, so always less deaths than the blue line, which represents the end of century. Again, this is consistent across all models, as you see there in figure B1, and across all impact functions, as if you see there in B2. Now, looking to what this means in terms of economic benefits, well, we find the same. We use four damage functions from air pollution, and we find exactly the same. So we find what you see in panel C, for example, is the benefit. Well, you see in all of those are the benefits of using net zero instead of using end of century. And what we see is that we always have more benefits in net zero. So let's see, for example, if you take, I don't know if you can see my cursor there, but if you take, for example, Dong et al. Specification of air pollution damages, when you calculate the benefits, some of the benefits are not accessible here by the end of the distribution. So the highest benefits are not accessible in end of century policy. So there's always more benefits, so it's always dominated. The cumulative distribution always dominates the net zero, always dominates the other in terms of more benefits. And these are not small economic benefits. Globally, these can reach around $750 billion in 2030. So this is really not negligible. So meaning that incorporating this type of knowledge when we find policies for climate and air pollution makes us such that we can optimize the benefits of both. So just to wrap up, non-overshooting climate policies have higher air pollution co-benefits than non-overshooting climate policies have higher air pollution health benefits than end of century. So these are scenario designs that we should pursue. Net zero policies provide also higher economic benefits. The Asian region is by far the region that benefits the most from this type of policy design. Although, and despite all these uncertainties that we have taken into account, we always find this consistent across all the specifications, all the impact functions, all the parameters we assumed. And although this magnitude is very uncertainty, the signal is always positive. So it's always better to do net zero instead of end of century from an air pollution point of view. And with this, I finish, and I hope I was clear, and I'm happy to hear from you. Much.
Yeah. Thank you, Lara, for the very interesting talk. She delivered the result on test scenarios on timing of high emission periods versus the compensation period with the multiple IAEM studies shows that higher co-benefits in non-overshoot scenario, which means timing is very important for both climate and air quality in terms of health benefits and economical benefits, which remind me my old parents' wisdom on do it now, not later. So thank you very much for your nice talk. Please give a big applause for her. As our next speaker, Dr. Akeem Ali, Head of Office, WHO Asia Pacific Center for Environment and Health in the Western Pacific region. Dr. Ali is a public health physician with extensive work experience across the globe in low, middle, and high-income countries. He led local public health authorities in the UK over 10 years period as a director of public health before joining WHO. He recently moved to lead the WHO Specialized Office for Environment and Health for the Western Pacific WHO region based in Seoul, Republic of Korea. His topic today is the same, the core benefits of addressing air pollution and climate change. Akeem?
Thank you, Professor Wu, and good evening. The good thing about being the last speaker is that I get a chance to emphasize and not repeat what other people have said. The difficult bit is to keep you awake until the end. But the good thing is that I'm talking about benefit of why we've stayed all through the session today. And it's not a surprise, is it, that the air we breathe is important. It keeps us alive. It gives us the opportunity to potentially contribute to economic and social and well-being development in the future. Therefore, you've heard earlier on about the impact on harmony, economic development, health. So it's no surprise that there's so many global players looking at air pollution and how we can manage them. And that's why we've got several sustainable development goals that are attached to working on air pollution. But also in our region, we've got various players from WHO to UN Environment Program, UNESCO, and of course all our member states with all the banks and all the other financiers. Surely there must be something good about doing something about the air we breathe. Otherwise, we would not all be clamoring to do something about it. And that's why what we're talking about today, it's important to look at the functions that a UN agency like WHO can perform, but others are also performing. We've talked about evidence, finding the right data, so we know what works, we know what we are going to gain, the policies that are required to actually do the right thing, nationally, regionally, and globally, having the right capacity and capability to do the right things, and of course, monitoring the impact of what we do. And monitoring the impact of what we do relates to both the investment and the end result that we get. And these are the areas in which WHO, with of course all the other partners within the UN and wider stakeholders are working on. So the center that I work in Seoul, with support from the Republic of Korea government and Seoul Metropolitan government, actually focus on these areas of work. You've heard this a lot of times today already. Air pollution kills people. But I turn it the other way. If we know that it kills people and it kills a lot of people, if we did the right thing, one of the first benefits is we avoid those deaths. So globally, 7 million premature deaths. In our region, 4 million. That's across all of Asia. And for the WHO Western Pacific region in itself, 2.2 million premature deaths. So if we do the right thing, we can avoid over 2 million premature deaths every year. And looking at the global figures, there is quite a big benefit ahead for us. It's also important to note the proportion of people in our region that are still exposed to poor air quality indoors because they use solid fuels. That's using coal or firewood to actually cook, which is the essence of life. You have to eat one way or the other. And therefore, part of the benefit of tackling air pollution by looking at energy source, by looking at fossil fuel use, actually would improve people's well-being, would improve their indoor environment, etc. WHO has been working on the issue of air pollution for several decades now. The landmark resolution in 2015, declaring air pollution as the biggest threat to public health, actually was preceded by the 2005 guidelines. 1998 was actually when WHO first started looking at the issues of air quality standards. And we had the first guideline in 2015, which has now been recently updated in 2021. And I wanted to highlight the fact that the benefit of working on this is so huge that we really can't, put it aside anymore. Just looking at some of the data that is available to us in the region, we know that the cost of having PM25 in our air is over $8 trillion US. That's, depending on which part of your region we're looking at, 2 to 10% of our GDP that we lose because we've got poor air and we know it kills people. I keep coming back to that. In our region, 19 of our 37 countries, and I'm talking about WHO Western Pacific region, are low middle income countries. And if you look on that chart, almost 11% of our GDP is lost because of air pollution. The converse is that if we did the right thing and actually were able to achieve the 2021 WHO air quality global standards, not only would we avoid all of the deaths and the costs that I've just talked about, we also have another benefit of $4.6 trillion US in our region, including avoiding 3 million additional deaths. And therefore, it's a good thing to do. And I'm sad to say that at the moment, none of our member states in the region have actually got national legislations with standards that are at the level of the WHO 2021 air quality global standards. So there is a lot of work for us to do. I know there's momentum from the work that you've heard earlier on from ENET, UNESCO, the wrap-up that is coming up. But I think this is a further impetus for us to really look at the benefit that is ahead of us if we do the right thing. It doesn't matter which way you cut it, it's a good thing to do. And so for us, we have been looking, just as you heard earlier on, at data from across the globe, looking at the example from Europe and the kind of benefits they've reaped from putting in sub-regional work on air pollution. 1.6 billion pounds in the UK, where I come from, 17,000 deaths avoided, and more than 3 million working days additional gain in terms of productivity. If UK as an economy can do that, could you imagine what we can do with Korea, China, Japan, Mongolia, etc. in our region? And that's not to forget our small island development states as well, where there is actually a very big potential gain. This is a very good way to look at how we can look at the co-benefits in the future. We reduce deaths, mortality, we reduce sickness, we improve productivity in the labor market, and as we've just heard, it's good for the climate. So the benefits abound, cuts across all levels, and you can think about it in terms of if we did the right thing about the way we use energy, new, sustainable, positive technology for us, the way we move in terms of transport, if we use sustainable and less mechanical transport, it's good for our health as well. Agriculture and the food we eat, the water that we drink, etc., etc. So the co-benefits of actually doing the right thing about the air that we breathe is essentially important and critical to sustainable development in our region. I wanted to put this slide up just to remind us climate change, air pollution, and health are very interlinked. And whichever way we look at it, whichever point at which we act, we will make a dramatic difference to our society. And therefore, yes, the issue of carbon neutrality becomes important. Net zero, as we've just heard, is a good way to look at it. And to do that, we don't just talk about it. We actually have a lot of tools that we can use. So you've had a few research studies that are ongoing in the region. I wanted to add to that list a few relevant WHO tools that we can use to actually not only measure the benefits, but also to monitor the impact of the actions that we take. We've got tools that can help us in looking at indoor air pollution, which has been used in parts of the world like India, in Africa, in Ghana. And we haven't got a lot of that being used yet in our region, but that's one way in which we can do work together to improve on air pollution. Looking at, of course, the health and economic benefits is fundamental to all of this. So let me finish by saying that we know that air pollution kills millions of people in our region. It causes tremendous economic loss. So if we revert that with absolute zero tolerance for inaction on this area of work, there is quite a lot to gain. And we can start by looking at the air quality global standards. There are interim targets that we can push for before we get to the final goal. We can look at the legislative actions that are required. And of course, the mitigation action that has to be put into the national determined contributions. But of course, the health system, whilst it benefits from reducing the health impact of air pollution, could also do a lot to reduce its own footprint in terms of contributing to carbon neutrality and low carbon systems. So WHO with partners are also supporting the work in the region to look at low carbon health system. We can only do this by emulating a very exemplar practice in Korea with significant amount of funding put into the system. Korea spent more than $8 billion US dollars in the last few years to tackle air pollution. But working together collaboratively across region will give us enough impetus to reap that benefit through co-financing, cooperation, partnership, and a focus on achieving global standards. So let me stop there in the interest of time. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Kim. Really, this is really important and interesting talk on the introducing the importance of WHO global air quality guidelines, not only for the air quality, but also for the climate change. The health impact burden of air pollution can be much avoided by attaining WHO air quality goal, and also climate change and air quality is intertwined. So we have to, follow the climate action and air quality action as well. It seems like in Korea, the air quality especially for the fine particle problems is getting better for last several years, maybe due to the COVID-19. However, it's could be getting back, but we need to have to make it even better by linking the climate policies like carbon neutrality with the air quality improvement policy. So it would be very nice and important points from as a last speaker. It is really glad to listen of what the WHO is trying on improving climate and air quality together. Thank you very much for three presenters, and please give big applause for them before we taking the question.